The sea roars, lightning splits the sky, a fleet of longships cuts through the tempest. Bearded men grip their oars, muscles straining against the fury of nature. These are the Vikings, fearless, unstoppable. Their dragon-headed ships slice through waves like knives through butter. The storm howls, but the Vikings howl louder. They are the masters of the sea, and they fear nothing. Rain lashes their faces, salt stings their eyes, but their gaze remains fixed on the horizon. There lies their destiny, glory, riches, new lands to conquer. As dawn breaks, the storm begins to subside. The first rays of sunlight pierce the clouds. The age of the Vikings has begun. Scandinavia, a land of fjords and forests, of long winters and brief glorious summers. This is the birthplace of the Vikings. Norway, Sweden, Denmark. These nations cradled a people who would change the course of history. The Vikings were born from this harsh landscape, shaped by its unforgiving nature. Molded into a race of hardy survivors and fearless adventurers, the land itself seemed to push them outward. Rugged mountains and dense forests made inland expansion difficult, but the sea offered endless possibilities. The Vikings were natural sailors. They read the waves and the stars, built ships that could navigate both open oceans and shallow rivers. Their longships became the key to their expansion. Swift, agile, and able to carry significant cargo, these vessels were technological marvels of their time. This restlessness, combined with their seafaring skills, would soon propel them beyond the borders of Scandinavia. The stage was set for an era of exploration and conquest that would leave an indelible mark on world history. What drove the Vikings to leave their homeland? The answer is complex. Part necessity, part ambition. Overpopulation pressured many to seek new lands. The Scandinavian soil was poor, unable to support growing communities, but there was more to it than mere survival. The Vikings were dreamers, adventurers. They craved the unknown. Stories of distant lands, rich in resources, fueled their imagination. Gold, silver, fertile fields. These were the promises that beckoned from beyond the horizon. The Vikings were also deeply competitive. Glory in battle was highly prized. Successful raids brought wealth and status. Young men eager to prove themselves saw the sea as a path to renown. Their culture celebrated exploration. The age of Viking expansion had begun. Behind the raids and adventures, there was a rich tapestry of daily life. Viking society was complex, structured. It revolved around the concepts of honor and loyalty. Families were the basic unit. Extended clans formed tight-knit communities. At the top were the jarls, the nobility. Below them, the carls free men who formed the bulk of society. At the bottom were the thralls, slaves captured in raids or born into bondage. Women in Viking society enjoyed more freedom than many of their European counterparts. They could own property, divorce their husbands, and even become traders or warriors. The legendary shield maidens, female warriors of Norse lore, inspired respect and fear. Children were valued, seen as the future of the clan. They were taught the ways of their people from an early age. Skills in farming, crafting, and warfare were passed down through generations. The Longhouse was the center of Viking life. These large communal buildings housed extended families. They were places of warmth and community during the long, harsh winters. This duality defined the Viking Age, a time of both destruction and creation. Section 5, Raids that shook the world. The year is 793 AD. The peaceful monastery of Lindisfarne off the coast of England awakens to horror. Viking longships appear on the horizon. What follows is a brutal attack that shocks Christendom. The Vikings pillage, burn, and slaughter. This raid marks the beginning of the Viking Age in the British Isles. It's a pattern that will be repeated across Europe for centuries. The Vikings were master tacticians. They used the element of surprise to devastating effect. Their ships could navigate shallow waters, allowing them to strike deep inland along rivers. They would appear suddenly, attack swiftly, and vanish before local forces could respond. Monasteries were favorite targets. They were often undefended and filled with valuable treasures. The raiders took gold, silver, and captives to be sold as slaves. As time went on, the raids grew in scale and ambition. The Vikings' reputation for ferocity spread far and wide. The Viking threat became a catalyst for change across Europe. Section 6, From Pillagers to Traders. The Vikings were more than just raiders. They were also skilled traders and merchants. As their explorations took them farther afield, they established vast trade networks. These stretched from the shores of North America to the markets of Constantinople. The Vikings traded in a wide variety of goods: furs, amber, honey, and slaves from the north, silk, spices, and silver from the east. Their economic impact was as significant as their military one. Key to their success as traders was their mastery of shipbuilding. Viking longships were not just war vessels. They were also excellent merchant ships, fast, sturdy, and able to navigate both open seas and rivers. This allowed the Vikings to reach markets that were inaccessible to other traders. They became middlemen in a global trade network, connecting distant cultures and economies. The city of Hedeby in modern-day Germany became a major Viking trading hub. It connected the North Sea to the Baltic, facilitating trade between Western Europe and the Slavic lands. The Vikings' commercial activities helped to revitalize the European economy after the fall of the Roman Empire. The image of the Viking changed from feared raider to respected merchant. Section 7. Legendary Explorers of the North. The Vikings were more than warriors and traders, they were also intrepid explorers. Their voyages took them to lands that were the stuff of legend. Iceland, Greenland, and even North America fell under their gaze. These journeys were epic sagas in themselves, tales of bravery, endurance, and discovery that still captivate us today. Erik the Red is one of the most famous Viking explorers. Exiled from Iceland for manslaughter, he sailed west. He discovered a large island covered in ice and snow. With typical Viking optimism, he named it Greenland. Erik's marketing ploy worked. Settlers followed him, establishing colonies that lasted for centuries. His son, Leif Erikson, would go even further. Around the year 1000, Leif reached the shores of North America. He called the land Vinland for the wild grapes he found there. The settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland is proof of the Vikings' presence in North America. It predates Columbus by nearly 500 years. The site includes the remains of Norse-style buildings and artifacts. It's a testament to the Vikings' extraordinary seafaring skills and their spirit of adventure. Section 8. The Twilight of the Viking Age. All great ages must come to an end. The Viking Age was no exception. By the 11th century, the tide was turning against the Norse raiders and settlers. The reasons for this decline were complex. A combination of political, economic, and cultural factors brought an end to Viking dominance. It was a gradual process, but one that would forever change the face of Northern Europe. One key factor was the strengthening of the kingdoms they had once raided. England, France, and other nations developed better defenses. They built fortified towns and organized standing armies. The element of surprise, so crucial to Viking success, was lost. The raiders found themselves facing increasingly stiff resistance. Victories became harder to achieve. The cost in lives and resources began to outweigh the potential gains. The spread of Christianity also played a role. As Viking settlers and their descendants converted, they became more integrated into European society. The Old Norse gods lost their hold. With them went much of the warrior ethos that had driven the Viking expansion. The age of exploration and conquest was giving way to an era of settlement and integration. Section 9. Christianity and cultural shifts. The adoption of Christianity marked a profound shift in Viking culture. It was a gradual process, spanning several generations. The first Christian missionaries faced fierce resistance. Many Vikings saw the new faith as a threat to their way of life. But over time, Christianity gained a foothold. By the end of the 11th century, most of Scandinavia had officially converted. This religious change had far-reaching consequences. It altered the Vikings' worldview and their social structures. The Old Norse gods had demanded courage and individual glory. Christianity emphasized peace and obedience to God. This shift in values helped to curb the raiding culture. It also brought Scandinavia more fully into the European cultural sphere. Churches replaced pagan temples. Monasteries became centers of learning and literacy. The conversion was not always peaceful. Some Norse rulers used force to impose the new faith. King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway was particularly zealous in his efforts. He traveled the country, destroying pagan shrines and punishing those who refused to convert. Section 10. The Fading of an Era. The end of the Viking Age was not marked by a single event. It was a gradual fading, a slow transformation of Norse society. By the mid-11th century, the great raids were largely a thing of the past. The Vikings had become settlers, traders, and rulers in their own right. Their descendants were more likely to wield plows than swords. The wild energy that had driven their expansion was channeled into nation-building and commerce. In England, the Viking Age is often said to have ended with the failed invasion of Harold Hardrada in 1066. He was defeated at the Battle of Stamford Bridge by the Anglo-Saxon king Harold Godwinson. These battles marked the end of both Anglo-Saxon and Viking dominance in England.